The truth behind my mother's shocking secret. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My mother gripped my wrist and whispered, "Burn the blue folder." The beeping monitors seemed to slow and thicken the room, like syrup pulling us both down. I'm Maya, 30, a hospice nurse who spends long nights helping strangers breathe softer at the edge of their lives. My work teaches me to sit with pain, to let truth arrive without force. But my mother, Elaine, the church treasurer everybody calls Saint Elaine, has never trusted slow truth. She trusts systems, budgets, locks, and lists. I kissed her temple and told her to rest. She wouldn't let my hand go. "Key," she breathed. "Top drawer." Then she closed her eyes, and the room fell into that false quiet that means nurses are running in the hall. I thought about next week's staff schedule, the rent due, and the way my mother's reputation holds our small community together like a ribbon around an overflowing drawer. If the ribbon snaps, everything spills. "Burn it," she had said. "My job is to document, to witness, not to torch the past." Still, I felt that old daughter reflex to obey, even when obedience felt like betrayal of the person I am at work. Outside the room, Pastor Glenn appeared, all soft voice, gentle shoes, and gratitude. "She'll be fine," he said. "God keeps his best servants." I nodded and felt the key in my pocket like a hot coin. If God keeps his best servants, why did my mother ask me to commit a sin by fire tonight? The nurse adjusted my mother's oxygen, the tube whispering secrets I couldn't hear. I closed my fist around the key and remembered the smell of singed paper. I knew I was about to ignore her command. I also knew there would be a price. The only question left was who would deliver the bill, and when. I turned toward the door, already rehearsing what to say when the first lock clicked open. We grew up in a house where invoices were ironed flat before they were filed. Mom's handwriting looked like careful stairs, each letter steady enough to hold a person. On Sundays, she glowed under the fellowship hall lights, tucking envelopes into the safe with a smile that announced, "This is what responsibility looks like." I used to trail behind her with a juice cup and a crumbly cookie, learning that grown-ups' warmth often came with a ledger. Before Dad left, she was softer, less polished. After he disappeared, her love found edges. "Order keeps grief from breaking the plates," she'd say, straightening a stack that wasn't crooked. Last month, an oddness slipped through her neat life. A call at midnight that shivered her voice. The ledger drawer at church locked when it never was. A grocery receipt with a line item blacked out. I'd laughed it off as fatigue and the ordinary paranoia of treasurers. Then she made a sharper cut. "Hospice is a heavy career," she told me over tea. "You'll harden, Maya. That kind of work eats the soft parts." I swallowed something bitter and pretended the tea had cooled wrong. The truth is, the work makes me softer, not harder. It makes pretenders seem loud. I pushed back my chair and said I needed fresh air. She apologized, quick, efficient, as if filing a correction. That apology didn't stitch the tear. Tonight in the hospital, it snagged like a hangnail. The woman who dismissed my work for being too heavy had asked me to carry fire on command. I pictured the bungalow, its tidy bow curtains, the smooth brass of her desk knob. I pictured a blue folder becoming smoke. I also pictured the look on her face if I disobeyed, and the look on mine if I obeyed and destroyed something that mattered more than reputation. When I reached the driveway, a motion light blinked on, and my brother's car was already there. Victor hates drama. He keeps his shirts in color order and his voice in neutral. He was on Mom's porch with his arms crossed like two closed doors. "Hospital called," he said. "She's stable." He watched me fish out the key. "What's that?" "Top drawer," I said. He didn't ask which drawer. We both knew. Inside, the bungalow looked paused rather than empty. The smell of lavender cleaner and old books. Dust held its breath on picture frames. In Mom's bedroom, I found the top drawer, a ceramic divider with tidy compartments, paper clips, stamps, rubber bands. Beneath the liner, a hollow clink. The second key, taped to a note card. On the note card, a number that looked familiar, 6 digits, then a dash, then 2. It pinged against my brain like a half-remembered song. I wrote it down and slid the drawer shut. In the office, the blue folder waited in a neat stack. It wasn't labeled. That alone felt like shouting. I opened it. Inside, a spare phone, dark and thin, a notepad with an unfamiliar P.O. box, a hospital bracelet with those same numbers, a safe deposit rental slip, and, folded crisply, a photocopy of a cashier's check from 2006 with the memo Benevolence Fund, urgent. My mouth went dry. Maya. Victor stood in the doorway, haloed by the hall lamp. Don't start this, he said. Mom wants it burned. Burning evidence is exactly how people become the worst version of themselves, I said softly. He shook his head. We are not people in a movie. We are a family in a town that gossips. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I'm good at waiting in rooms where the air feels heavy. I'm not good at pretending weight isn't there. The phone buzzed alive when I charged it. 2 contacts, RNV. Not Ruth or Victor. The numbers didn't match. And 1 text thread with a single sentence. Not over. Meet at box if I don't return. I looked at the bracelet again and realized where I had seen that number printed. At the hospital, every bracelet gets a number, but the dashes mark special categories: transfers, holds, alias flags. The bracelet in Mom's folder had the alias flag. My chest tightened. In the morning, Pastor Glenn appeared again and thanked me for helping Elaine keep everything running. A volunteer sidled close to the nurse's station and whispered, "We're doing inventory. Some totals are confusing." While Mom slept, the pastor handed me her church keys, just to simplify. They chinked into my palm like coins in a collection plate. I nodded, said I'd bring them home, and tucked the ring into my bag. On the way out, a man in a charcoal jacket hovered near the elevators. He glanced at me, then away. When I stepped closer, he pressed the up button, stepped in, and didn't look back. In the parking lot, I turned on the spare phone again. No new messages. I dialed the voicemail. One saved message from 5 months ago, a woman's voice, clipped and efficient. "This is Community Bank. We need Ms. Elaine to confirm activity on safety deposit box 314. Please bring identification." I hung up, sat with the steering wheel beneath my palms, and tried to breathe down the panic. In hospice, we teach families to name what's happening. Denial is a warm blanket that gets heavy fast. I drove to the church. The office smelled like coffee and old carpet. The ledger drawer was locked, my mother's key fit. Inside, colored tabs, balanced columns, the tender hum of order on paper. But the receipts told 2 stories. The dates didn't match the newsletter announcements. The cash withdrawals were always in round numbers, the kind people choose when they can't say what it's for out loud. Maya, a volunteer, peered in, then withdrew. I copied the recent pages, slid the originals back, and locked the drawer. If Elaine's clean staircase handwriting was covering holes, the holes would now have edges I could trace. As I left the office, the man in the charcoal jacket stood by the sanctuary door and pretended to pray. Victor made grilled cheese like we were kids dodging a thunderstorm. "We don't need this," he said. "Let it go for Mom's sake." He hates the word scandal. It gnaws at him like a mouse in the walls. I called godmother Ruth. She answered on the second ring with her usual brisk tenderness. "If Elaine told you to burn something, don't," she said. "She's always been better at scrubbing than confessing." Victor rolled his eyes. "Ruth likes drama. Ruth likes truth," she corrected. "And I like you both calm." I told her about the alias flag, the safe deposit, the cashier's check. Silence widened, then broke. "Check the county records," Ruth said. "Pre-church years. Your mother had a life before the potlucks." Victor set the spatula down too hard. "We are not tearing her down while she's sick. We're preventing worse," I said. "If funds are off, people get hurt." He turned off the stove. People get hurt when reputations drown, too. The 3 of us stood in a triangle of quiet, duty, fear, and love, all pointing outward. I carry dying people's last questions on my scrubs every week. What did we hide? Who did we harm? What truth did we refuse when it could have saved someone? I couldn't be the daughter who burned the answer. I also couldn't be the daughter who detonated a rumor and called it justice. "Slow," Ruth said, like a metronome. "Document, then decide." Victor rubbed his forehead. "1 week," he said. "No public moves. You show me facts, not feelings." I agreed because facts calm frightened rooms. "Tomorrow," I said, "the bank and the county." Victor nodded, but his eyes begged me to choose silence. I hugged him anyway. Fear can't be argued out, only steadied. That night, someone slid a church bulletin under our mother's door with "Stay out of this" scrawled in red. Morning light was thin as old paper. I opened the blue folder again. Spare phone, P.O. Box, bracelet, 2006 check. The check's memo, benevolence fund, urgent, kept tugging my attention, the way guilt tugs a sleeve. Benevolence funds pay light bills, rent, gas, quiet mercy for hard weeks. In 2006, I was 11. My mother was already perfecting the look of a woman who never needed anything. I logged into a public terminal at the library and searched the P.O. Box. It mapped to a downtown unit registered to E.L., not Elaine Lynn, not Elaine Louise. Just letters. At Community Bank, the lobby looked like trust carved into glass. I asked about Box 314. The teller blinked, then fetched a manager who asked for identification. "I'm her daughter," I said. "She's hospitalized." He softened, then hardened. "Without her, we can only note your concern." I left a message on his desk for journalist Harris from the paper. Ruth had sworn he was discreet and fair. Next stop, county records. The clerk smelled like peppermint and ink. I asked for property liens, name changes, sealed adoption pointers. "Sealed means sealed," she said, "but you can see the index." The index pointed me to an old accident report from our neighborhood. A toddler injured, a neighbor blamed, no charges filed. My stomach lurched. I remembered the neighbor's face. Tight smile, house sold fast, whispers at church. When I stepped outside, the charcoal jacket man stood by the vending machine. "You're Maya," he said. "Not a question. Leave this. Your mother is beloved." I met his eyes. Beloved people can still bleed others dry. He shrugged. "You won't like what you find." He walked away with the calm of someone who believes fear is a leash. I called Victor. "We have breadcrumbs," I said. "And we have someone guarding the trail." He didn't answer for a long time. "1 week," he repeated, like a spell. Back home, the spare phone lit with a new text that chilled my bones. "Box today. If not you, then the board." No name, no punctuation, from an unknown number. I screenshotted it and forwarded to my email. I met Mom's ex-assistant, Paula, at a coffee shop near the church, the kind of place that makes you whisper. I left because she stopped letting me reconcile. Paula said, stirring a coffee she never sipped. Everything looked fine until it didn't. Then things moved off paper. She slid me copies of 2 months' deposit slips. The timings didn't match the newsletters. The amounts were round and frequent, like withdrawals disguised as mercy. Did anyone question her? I asked. Paula smiled sadly. Question St. Elaine? They'd sooner question gravity. I traced the numbers with my finger. A pattern emerged. Small transfers into EL, then a larger withdrawal to benevolence emergency. I cross-referenced timestamps with the county index. The pattern spiked around the week of the old accident. I called the bank manager again, left a message that Harris would join me. Back at the church, I asked for the storage room and found archive boxes of newsletters. The weeks didn't align with receipts. When truth wants to be found, it starts rhyming. I heard the sanctuary door creak and froze. The charcoal jacket man stood in the aisle. "You keep showing up," I said. "Do you have a name? Do you need one?" He smiled without teeth. "People will suffer if you keep digging." "People already suffered," I said. He held my gaze, then left, footsteps soft on old carpet. I scanned what I could and slipped out. In the car, Ruth called. "How bad?" "Bad," I said, "but not why bad yet." She exhaled. The why is usually ego or fear dressed as love. I looked at the hospital bracelet and finally understood what the alias flag pointed at. The alias wasn't for my mother. It was for a second identity connected to church payouts and a sealed adoption. E.L. matched more than a P.O. box. It matched an alternate name on a decades-old guardianship petition. I found an archived social notice, a private dedication for a baby with no family names printed. That week aligned with the accident report. My breath stuttered. In my chest, truth ran a finger along an old scar and pressed. I drove to the neighbor's old street and parked in front of the house that used to be theirs. The new owner knew nothing. I sat there, feeling the heat through the windshield, and called the number that had texted me. It rang and rang, then clicked. "Silence," I said. "If you're protecting my mother, help me protect the people she hurt." The line went dead. At the hospital, Mom's eyes fluttered open. "You didn't burn it," she rasped. I shook my head. "I'm your daughter and a nurse," I said. "I don't burn what heals." She smiled, small and sad. "Healing hurts." I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but chose one. Who is EL? Her expression altered like a portrait catching new light. Someone who kept a promise. Her lids drifted down again. Victor stepped in with flowers and a warning glance. In the hall, he hissed, "Stop interrogating her." "I asked one question," I said. He pinched the bridge of his nose. "The board is meeting about donations. Paula is stirring things. They'll eat her alive." I felt sick. The stakes were no longer theoretical. If the board found what I found without the context of mercy and fear, they'd write a villain where a complicated human stood. That could still be justice, but it wouldn't be healing. My phone buzzed. Harris had confirmed. He'd meet us at Community Bank tomorrow at 10. I filled a folder the way Mom taught me. Tidy, chronological, undeniable. Photocopies of ledgers and deposit slips, the 2006 cashier's check, the newsletter pages, the safe deposit rental slip, and my notes on the alias flag. I added a printed transcript of the unknown text. I recorded a call with the bank manager requesting a supervised visit to the box with a church representative and a journalist present. If the lid came off, it had to happen in daylight with witnesses. Ruth insisted on meeting me early. She wrapped my hands in hers at the diner. "Promise me," she said, "if a baby is involved, you lead with protection, not punishment." "I promise," I said, though my stomach lurched at what that might require. Victor slid into the booth, pale and determined. "If this is about an adoption, you stop before you hurt someone who never asked for this." I nodded. "That's why Harris is here, to keep us honest, not hungry." We drove in 2 cars, like separate kingdoms on cautious terms. Outside the bank, Harris waited with a legal pad and calm eyes. "I'm not here to ruin lives," he said. "I'm here to reduce rumor into fact." The manager escorted us to a small room. He explained procedures. He asked, again, for identification we couldn't provide. We explained the hospitalization, the community risk, the church keys, the board's interest. He pursed his lips. "We'll note your concerns." "Not enough," I said. "Then we'll reconcile ledgers against deposits in the presence of the pastor." The manager hesitated. "Pastor?" Harris nodded. "Transparency protects the bank, too." The manager left to make calls. He returned with Pastor Glenn, whose smile looked carved and tired, and a decision already gleaming in his eyes. That night, before the bank meeting, the church had a potluck for prayer and praise. Mom wasn't there, but her absence felt like a theme someone refused to name. Casseroles steamed under foil. Children tangled underfoot. I carried paper plates and watched Pastor Glenn circle, consoling, collecting. He cornered me between the rolls and the lemonade. "You're making a stir," he said softly. "You should let sleeping dogs lie." His breath was mint and certainty. "Sleeping dogs tend to wake hungry," I said. "Better we feed truth than let rumor feed us." He chuckled without humor. "Your mother is a pillar. If you chip her, the whole porch sags." Ruth appeared like a cliff under my feet. "The porch already sags," she said mildly. A deacon joined, smile tight. "Maya, dear, you're tired. Hospice work will do that." He patted my arm like putting a child back in a crib. Heat flushed my face. I reached for a roll so I wouldn't reach for his wrist. "Tomorrow we meet at the bank," I said levelly. "Come if you want the truth the same size as the story." The deacon's smile thinned. "Dangerous game." "I'm not playing," I said. Ruth squeezed my shoulder. Later, at the hospital, Mom was awake enough for a whisper. "Glenn likes a clean sanctuary," she murmured. "Even if he sweeps people under the pews." I blinked. "Did he ask you to move money?" She looked away. "He asked me to keep peace." Her eyelids fluttered, then steadied. "You were a soft baby," she said, smiling. "You hated loud rooms." In the morning, Glenn walked into the bank conference room with the charcoal jacket man behind him. The manager set down a stack of reconciliation forms. Harris clicked his pen. Ruth sat with her hands folded, knuckles pale. Victor leaned in a corner, trying to be invisible. Pastor Glenn laced his fingers, the picture of patient authority. The charcoal jacket man finally had a name badge. Victor Vaughn, Church Board Treasurer Pro Temp. V. From the spare phone. He looked at me like a teacher waiting for a student to break. "We'll start with ledgers," the manager said. "Deposits, withdrawals, beneficiaries." I laid out the copies. Glenn scanned, nodded, pursed his lips at the mismatched dates, and forced a benevolent smile back into place. "Administrative lags," he said. Harris wrote, "Administrative lags." "And the cash advances?" Harris asked. Emergency benevolence, Glenn said, almost kind. We sometimes help quietly. My finger tapped the 2006 check photocopy. What emergency? Glenn's eyes cooled. Privacy is part of mercy. So is accuracy, I said. The manager cleared his throat. We cannot open the box without Ms. Elaine. Then compare box access logs with these dates, Harris said. Show whether the pattern aligns. The manager left with the forms. Ruth leaned toward Glenn. You've always liked a spotless table. He smiled without touching his eyes. Ruth, we're protecting a family. Which one? She asked softly. Vaughn's phone vibrated. He silenced it without looking. Victor watched him, and suddenly I knew he recognized the number. He stepped forward. Who are you calling during a reconciliation? Vaughn shrugged and said nothing. The manager returned, face tighter, holding logs that contradicted every story Glenn had just told us. Accesses occurred on dates not matching committee records, the manager said, and the authorized user alternated between Elaine Lynn and E.L. He set the printouts on the table like a deck of cold cards. Harris leaned closer. Who is E.L.? Glenn kept his voice gentle. A bookkeeping shorthand. Shorthand doesn't show up on state IDs, Harris replied. Vaughn cleared his throat. We should adjourn. We should not, Ruth said. The manager hesitated, then pushed a screen toward us with an itemized list. Copies of letters stored inside, photos, a notarized guardianship consent, and a signed statement from my mother using E.L. as an alias to direct benevolence funds toward the care of an unnamed infant after an accident left the mother incapacitated and the neighbor blamed. My stomach dropped. So the baby is grown, Glenn cut in. Privacy. His voice sharpened. Elaine saved a life when systems failed. Harris's jaw worked. Saved or rerouted funds to manage a story and avoid a lawsuit. Glenn turned to me, warmth gone. Your digging turns mercy into math. Math is how mercy avoids stealing, I said. Vaughn finally snapped. Enough. He pointed at me. If you publish this, you crush an innocent adult. If you bury it, you punish a wrongly blamed neighbor forever, Ruth said. The room hummed with a sound I know well from hospice rooms, a truth hovering, about to land. The manager spoke carefully. Ms. Elaine's statements named Pastor Glenn as a witness to the alias. Glenn's mask cracked. She offered me the burden, he said, almost pleading. I took it. He looked at me like a supplicant, and then like an accuser, and finally like a man cornered. The board convened an emergency session that afternoon. The sanctuary smelled like old varnish and new fear. Paula presented the mismatched ledgers, her voice steady, hands shaking. Harris observed from a back pew with a face like a locked file cabinet. Glenn offered a speech about compassion in crisis and imperfect accounting in the service of souls. A murmur rose and fell like a tide troubled by a moan. The board voted for an independent audit and a temporary suspension of Mom's treasurer duties pending review. Someone gasped, someone clapped, someone prayed loudly like volume could change outcomes. I texted the wrongly blamed neighbor's last known number. It bounced. Ruth found a sister on Facebook, sent a careful message. Victor sat beside me, jaw set. You happy? He whispered. No, I said. I'm relieved and ashamed at once. He closed his eyes. Our mother will hate you for this. Maybe, I said. But a baby lived, and a neighbor lost their name. Both truths need room. At the hospital, I told Mom about the audit and the board vote. Her face went still, like a pond hit by a thrown stone. Glenn promised me privacy, she said hoarsely. He promised safety. He promised silence, I said. Silence keeps wounds wet. She turned her head away. You always like tearing bandages. I like wounds that can finally breathe, I said. My nurse manager called to ask if I could cover 2 shifts. Gossip had reached the unit. I'll be there, I said, and braced for the stairs. That night, Harris texted, found the adopted adult. She wants to meet you tomorrow. We met in a small park behind the hospital, where trees made a quiet ceiling. Her name was Lena, the name my mother had given my brother by accident in another timeline, it seemed, but this Lena wore it like armor. She was 24, careful-eyed, with a laugh that sounded like she didn't trust it yet. Harris stood a respectful distance away. I know about the accident, she said softly. I don't know why the money moved, or why my file looks like a ghost. I told her what I'd found and what I hadn't. The alias, the benevolence transfers, the promise to protect. The neighbor who took the town's blame without the town's forgiveness. She listened without blinking, then asked one question that lifted and broke me at once. Was I loved or managed? I swallowed. Probably both, I said. Some loves grow crooked around fear. She nodded slowly. Then let's straighten it. We drafted a letter together, to the board, to the neighbor's family, to the county clerk requesting a review with new evidence. I wrote conditions for any help I'd give my mother. Therapy, full cooperation with the audit, a public apology to the neighbor's family, and a commitment to codify the church's benevolence policy, signatures and oversight, not whispers. Ruth read it and said, "Boundaries that heal usually sting." Victor arrived with a face like rain. "Mom is asking for you," he told me, voice tight. "And Glenn is spinning like a top." I folded the letter into my pocket and headed for the hospital room with shaking hands. Mom watched me enter with eyes older than yesterday. "I wanted to save a child," she said before I spoke. Systems were slow. People were cruel. Money moved because I couldn't move the world. I sat and took her hand. "You saved a child," I said, "and hurt a neighbor. Both can be true." She closed her eyes. "I believed a spotless story was kindness." "A clean lie is still a lie," I answered. And the stains spread. I told her about Lena in the park, about the letter we drafted, about the audit and the policy we'd demand. No more envelopes without signatures. No more emergencies without oversight. No more aliases in the name of mercy. I told her I would help with an attorney only if she cooperated, apologized publicly, and signed our conditions. Her jaw trembled. "You sound like a nurse," she said. Firm hands, gentle voice. I smiled. "I sound like your daughter, who refuses to burn a future to save a past." She nodded, tears refusing showy exits. She read the letter twice, corrected a date, then signed it with the same careful handwriting she used on ledgers. That afternoon the board received her statement. Pastor Glenn offered his own, and the audit firm was engaged. A week later, in the fellowship hall where casseroles once disguised rumors, Mom stood at a microphone and apologized to the neighbor's family by name, acknowledging the harm of secrecy. There was no applause. There were tissues and quiet. Ruth held my elbow like a lighthouse holds its beam. Victor slipped his hand into mine. Harris wrote a piece that read like a ledger balanced at last. No villains, only choices weighed in public. Lena came. She hugged Mom a long time and then hugged me longer. She didn't want cameras, only fairness. The board adopted the new benevolence policy unanimously. The bank sealed the reconciled file with clear notes. The neighbor's obituary page was updated with a correction that the town shared without fanfare. At the hospital, Mom's room grew lighter, even on gray days. We sat by the window, counting buses, and practiced a new kind of silence, the kind that needs no hiding. She asked about my patients. I told her how small mercies look when they're signed and witnessed. If you are holding a family legend like a fragile heirloom, here is what I learned on a bench outside that hospital. Truth does not erase love. It teaches love how to breathe. And here is one practical thing. Write down what matters, sign it, share it with someone who will hold you to it. Because mercy without records becomes a story that hurts the very people it swears to protect.